On March 17, 2025, in a quiet suburb of Illinois, the routine silence of a courthouse was broken by the announcement of shocking allegations. A former high school teacher and soccer coach, Christina Formella, had been formally charged with aggravated criminal sexual abuse and criminal sexual assault involving one of her students. From that moment, a scandal would unfold that exposed betrayal, secrecy, and questions about power, trust, and accountability in a school environment. If you're hearing this for the first time, subscribe now so you don't miss updates, because this case is still evolving and the truth is far from settled. That day, news outlets reported that the victim, then 15 years old, and his mother had gone to the Downers Grove Police Department to report inappropriate sexual contact by the boys' soccer coach and tutor. The investigation that followed would unearth a disturbing timeline of alleged abuse, grooming behaviors, and secrets hidden in a teacher's phone. In the initial charges, prosecutors accused Formella of using her role of authority and trust to commit sexual assault inside a classroom scenario. Her release from custody was granted under strict conditions. She could not enter her former school and was prohibited from contacting minors. These began what would be a protracted legal battle, one where new revelations would dramatically expand the case. As the story unfolded, more charges would come. The quiet suburb would become a focal point for national attention, and behind every headline was a young man, a teacher, and the messy intersection of trust and betrayal. In the days following the initial charges, investigators dug deeper. What seemed like a single incident would allegedly become a multi-year pattern. Prosecutors stated that Christina Formella had begun grooming the student when he was 14, and that their sexual relationship spanned until late 2024. In June 2025, a DuPage County grand jury would unseal 52 additional charges, bringing the total to nearly 55 counts, including criminal sexual assault, aggravated criminal sexual abuse, indecent solicitation of child, and grooming. According to the state's attorney's announcement, these newly revealed allegations painted a far darker picture. They claimed the abuse occurred approximately 50 times, including at least 45 times on school grounds and multiple times at her home. Text messages and other digital evidence were said to show grooming behavior, expressions of sexual intent, and emotional manipulation. Another twist. Authorities claim that Formella kept a memoir in her phone's notes app. In that personal document, she allegedly expressed anger, heartbreak, and jealousy, writing things like, "We will never ever be together again," and "I'm not a second choice." These internal writings would be used by prosecutors to suggest a level of emotional investment and duplicity behind the allegedly illicit relationship. When she was arraigned on the expanded charges, the judge again declined to detain her before trial, but imposed stricter conditions: monitoring software on her devices, a GPS tracking mandate, and a buffer zone preventing her from approaching the student's home, school, or workplace. In court, the judge described the allegations as horrifying in nature and shocking. On her part, Formella has denied all sexual contact. She claimed that the student manipulated her phone to send messages to himself and then deleted them from her device in a scheme to blackmail her. Her defense also argued that she was being unfairly targeted, partly because of her appearance and public perception. But the flood of evidence, including messages, logs, and supposed memoir, would make a simple rebuttal difficult. More than the individual charges, the expansion signaled a shift. What was framed at first as a single lapse was now alleged as a sustained exploitation of power and trust. As the stakes rose, so would the media coverage, public outrage, and scrutiny. Behind every high-profile legal case, our lives change forever. In this part, we explore the human cost: the victim, the school community, and the accused. For the teenage boy at the center of the case, what started with confusion likely turned into suffering. According to prosecutors, he and his family came forward after discovering an explicit text thread on his phone, which triggered investigation. The interviews at the DuPage County Children's Advocacy Center revealed more disclosures, indicating the abuse allegedly began in January 2023, continuing through August or September 2024. If true, that timeline suggests a long period of trauma, one where the victim may have struggled internally before coming forward. Within the school environment, trust shattered. Formella was not only a teacher, but also a soccer coach. She had daily access and influence over students. Some may have never suspected anything was amiss. The district removed her from duty, and she eventually resigned and surrendered her teaching license. Administrators described the community as reeling and expressed devastation at the breach of trust. Parents, students, and staff were forced to face the possibility that someone they trusted had deceived them. In the public discourse, she appeared in the 2024-25 yearbook, including team photos and as a faculty headshot, because the print process began before her arrest. That visual reminder, printed in school halls, hauntingly underscored how deeply entwined she had been in the school's identity. For Formella herself, life changed abruptly. Legal constraints, no contact with minors, no school entry, GPS monitoring, device supervision became her new reality. Her defense would paint her as a teacher wrongly accused, a victim of blackmail, one who had been cast out by public opinion before any verdict. But in the meantime, her reputation, career, and relationships were in ruin. Even the physical space she inhabited was affected. She requested a reduction of the buffer zone from 5,000 feet to 2,500 feet to retain proximity to familiar areas, but the court denied it for protection of the victim. Given that restriction, reports later surfaced that she was attempting to sell her home and stay with her parents so she would not violate the proximity ban. The emotional toll on all parties cannot be understated. The victim and his family must contend with trauma and public attention. The school community must rebuild trust and guard student safety. And Formella faces a long legal path with existential stakes. If convicted, the potential penalty could reach up to 60 years in prison. As the case moves through the legal system, every detail matters: evidence, procedure, defense, and public scrutiny. From the prosecution side, the case appears supported by several pillars. Digital evidence, text messages, logs, metadata, device records are central. Prosecutors say there are hundreds, if not thousands, of messages aligning with what the teen claimed. Timeline corroboration. The period alleged January 2023 to September 2024, and the frequency of encounters are designed to show continuity, not isolated incidents. Memoir/notes app writings. The alleged notes, with emotional language in reference to relationship conflict, bolster a narrative of invested emotional engagement. Victim testimony and forensic interviews. The boy's interviews with child advocacy officials and his disclosures are key. However, the defense has multiple angles of challenge. Denial and alternative explanation. Formella has denied all sexual contact. She asserts the student manipulated her phone to send himself explicit texts, erased evidence, and framed her. Questions of consent and coercion. While minors cannot legally consent, the defense will likely challenge alleged coercion, power dynamics, and timing of certain messages. Chain of custody and evidence integrity. The defense will examine how devices were seized, how data was extracted, whether any tampering or alteration is possible. Public bias and media exposure. With intense media coverage, including sensational headlines, defense may argue pretrial publicity is fueling bias. Proximity and legal restrictions. Formella's requests, such as reducing the buffer zone, suggest tactical management of her movement. The court refused, citing victim safety. One legal twist already emerged. Courts rejected a reduction of the buffer zone to 2,500 feet. That suggests ratcheted safeguards in favor of victim protection over the defendant's convenience. The judge's decisions on pretrial release conditions and evidence admissibility will shape how this goes forward. Because this has not yet gone to full trial, as of the latest public record, there's no verdict to report. The next major hearing was scheduled for August 4th, 2025, to address procedural matters and prepare for trial. So far, the case highlights how digital evidence, emotional narratives, and legal maneuvering are converging in complex sex abuse prosecution. The Christina Formella case poses difficult questions for educators, school communities, and the justice system. This last part reflects on broader implications and what to watch for as the story continues. Firstly, trust in educational settings is fragile. A teacher holds authority, access, and influence. When allegations arise, communities demand transparency, safety protocols, and accountability. This case underscores the need for institutions to proactively safeguard students. Secondly, Digital relationships complicate power dynamics. Text messages and secret notes can stretch what was private into public evidence. The lines between grooming and emotional manipulation blur. The memoir notes allegedly found on Formella's phone show how technology extends intimacy and suspicion. Thirdly, due process versus public condemnation is a tightrope. The public, media, and social platforms have already formed narratives. But in the courtroom, every defendant is presumed innocent until proven guilty. The tension between protecting the victim and ensuring a fair trial is central. Fourth, the stakes are immense. If convicted on all counts, Formella could face decades in prison, possibly up to 60 years. She may appeal, challenge evidence, or negotiate plea deals. As we wait, here are key upcoming elements to watch. The August 4th, 2025 court appearance, motions, evidence disputes, trial scheduling. Whether prosecutors introduce further charges or expand scope, defense filings challenging key evidence, or demanding dismissal of counts. Media coverage shifts, especially new revelations or leaks. The trial itself, witnesses, cross-examinations, jury instructions, possible plea negotiations, or settlement before full trial. Until then, viewers and listeners should remain aware. What seems sensational may conceal procedural nuance, legal complexity, and human suffering. As this case moves closer to trial, one question still echoes through every headline and courtroom corridor. Who's telling the truth? Was Christina Formella a trusted teacher who crossed the line in the worst possible way, or a woman caught in a storm of accusations she can never escape? Either way, the outcome will send a message that reaches far beyond Illinois. If you want to follow how this story unfolds, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you believe really happened here? Until the next episode, stay safe, stay alert, and remember, behind every scandal, there's always more than meets the eye.